Petroglyph podcast.
Hi, this is Matthew Anderson, and I'm here with TA number 5. We're playing the Panzer General Allied Assault board game. In this video, Chuck Kroegel, the game designer for the board game and XBLA games, will be talking a little bit about his history in the industry and about the design of this game. Also, Jeff Jirsa, the producer, will be talking about the design as well. So, I need cards for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I started out in a company called SSI, Strategic Simulations, and we did war games. And we did them in a fairly traditional way in regards to basically hexes and turn-based, and it's a fairly involved, complicated process that a good group of people out there enjoyed, and SSI had quite the name for doing those kinds of games. So it came to be one day that we were playing a game called Daisinku by SystemSoft, a company in Japan, on the Sega Genesis, and it was only published in Japan. It wasn't published here in the United States, so it was actually in Japanese, but we loved it so much that we played it, and it was with hexes, but they did something different. They really put fun first for that war game, and because of that, they didn't really pay much attention to scale, and they did a few other things too, which we thought was sort of new thinking in regards to how you would play a war game. So we decided, maybe we'll think outside the box and come up with a war game that's different, that doesn't pay as much attention to scale and the exact simulation. In essence, we created a game where World War II, where you started out as a German with a small number of forces and units, and you started in Poland, and you progressed battle to battle all the way through World War II, and you took your units with you and you progressed them almost like a role-playing game, and you improved their weapons and you improved their experience, and they got tougher and stronger.
Probably the biggest challenge we had on Panzer General Allied Assault was taking a rule set that was developed for a board game and turning it into a digital game. We had a prototype version of the board game working about a year ago, so the rules were all completely intact. The difficulty came in getting the XBLA version running and having people understand all of those rules in a digital format. That was probably the biggest challenge, is getting our UI, our user interface, to the point where people could understand what was going on and effectively play the game.
You have, in essence, and this is the board game version here, but it works the same on the XBLA, where you have a notion, we have a gridded map with squares, and it's a grid like 5 by 6, and so you have this board game with tiled terrain that would have impact on the combat, and then you have these, the cards. You have cards in your hand, and then you play these cards directly onto the map tiles, and then you move them around and have combat. So it's sort of an intersection between a board game and a card game. Sort of like, it's not collectible, but it's sort of like a collectible card game in that you have two kinds of cards. You have unit cards, which would be the tanks and infantry, and then you have what we call action cards, which allow you to sort of buff up these combat cards. It makes it so that you can move them further on the board. You can have multiple attacks, a variety of different things as you would expect in a collectible card game. So we merged the two mechanics between a card game and a board game, and we did a prototype, actually a board game prototype for Ubisoft, just to show them what we had in mind, which they did like, and then we took that design and moved it over to the XBLA on the Xbox, and we programmed the game with that notion in mind. And then from there we retrofitted it back to a board game, and Panzer General the board game, which will be coming out later on this year.
The great thing about working on an XBLA title is you've got a really small team size. The dedicated team to Panzer General was actually 6 people. We had 2 programmers, an artist, a UI manager, the audio person, a designer, and myself, the producer. Chuck Kroegel actually worked as a kind of design visionary and executive producer, so he was on most of the time as well. But having a real small team size is nice because you can get really focused time with each particular team member. The development cycle was about 9 months long from the time we started making principal assets for the game to the time I made it through Microsoft certification.
Both the board game and the XBLA version are essentially the same game. And so you move around, you have the cards that you play the cards on the board, the cards become their own units and their own entity on the board, and you move them around and have combat and take objectives and so forth. So we were pretty excited about this because we felt that this was a new way of playing a war game, something that would have a broader appeal, be more accessible for people to play. And we think we're right. I mean, it's been proven out with the people who have played it so far. The people here at Petroglyph, most of them were new to the Panzer General IP, but they got into this game and they really contributed in bringing it to what it is.
All right, look. That's all right.
No, last
you know
time
what?
he said.
No, but you've been cheating this whole time. Shenanigans. You're lying.